Good evening, everybody. We got another show for the Black History Month series. And tonight we have the author of the book, um, Time Served My Days and Nights on Death Row. We have the author of that book. Her name is Mrs. Simone Green Bowden. Tonight we're going to discuss, you know how you watch the music videos and you see what's going on in the music videos. You follow these rap stars and R&B stars, and you the Source magazine and all that stuff. You see the photos, you see all the pictures or whatever, but you never get to hear the story of the person behind the camera. Well, you're going to learn tonight. And the guest tonight is the author of Time Served: My Days and Nights on Death Row, and she is in the building. And I'd like to bring her to the mic, Mrs. Simone Green Bowden. How you doing, Miss?
Okay, just call me Simone, or you can call me Simone Bowden, but just call me Simone. I'm not a green anymore, but thanks for having me.
I'm glad to have you. I was reading your book, and man, I had to stop in the middle of the book and call somebody. I was like, man, you got to get this book. You got a friend of mine who has another show. You got to get this book, and you got to have her on your show after she's done with mine, because this this woman here has done some living, and
Yes,
you have got to read this book. Um, Go ahead.
a lot of work went into it. A lot of work.
Uh, a lot of life.
Well, sometimes it's hard to narrow it down to 275 pages too, after you've been around a long time.
That didn't seem like 200, because I normally I get audio books. I very seldom sit down and like actually read a book. I get an audio book, and just listen to it. But that didn't seem like 200 some pages, because I went through that book like I couldn't put it down.
I've heard that many times. Many times I've heard people say, I'm not a reader, but I couldn't put it down after I read the first page.
Yeah, I mean that's it's a good read, and it made me more interested in talking to you. Because I was like, man, I can't wait to get this show going, because I really want to sit down and talk to this lady, because especially I'm a big fan of hot wings.
Oh, well, you hadn't had none until you had mine.
From the book I can see, because you know
Yeah, my wings are famous around. I was born and raised in Buffalo.
mhm.
So, and my first job was at the Anchor Bar in Buffalo when I was a teenager, and I got tired of smelling chicken wings. So, once you learn how to make something, it's done. So I make them a lot.
Well, from what I read of what Tupac said about your chicken wings, you might want to get a patent on those and get those in the grocery store. I'd be your number one customer.
And look, no, look, my ex-husband will be the number one customer because it's like that's the only thing I think he missed about not being married is my chicken wings. But the wings, I don't know. Tupac accidentally slipped up on my wings, and he was there visiting, and somebody else tried to take the credit that they had made the wings. And as they told the lie, I walked in the room. And I was like, why are you licking the bowl? And he's like, whoever made these wings. I was like, I made the wings. And from that point, we were friends.
So, tell us the story about Ali.
Okay, so when I was young, I used to go to a center in Buffalo, New York, called the African Culture Center. And at the African Culture Center, you learned how to dance, and um, you really kind of, it was African dance. And we had African History Month. And back then I was like, well, maybe I was probably about 9 or 10, maybe a little older because my sister was 1 year younger than me. And Muhammad Ali came to the center with his entourage. and we did a dance show for him. And after the show, he they had the press come in from the Buffalo Evening News, and they took pictures of us with him, and he ended up putting me and my sister on his shoulder, and we ended up on the front of the Buffalo Evening newspaper. Well, fast forward to 1991, coming back to Los Angeles. No, it was 1989 because I worked in Los Angeles on Soul Train also. But my first job in Los Angeles is I ran into Muhammad Ali and his manager. And for some odd reason, I think it was the eyes that he kind of remembered me a little bit, but he kept telling the guy, I know her. And come to find out, that's where he knew me from, was from the African Culture Center all those years before. And I ended up doing a little bit of work with him. Did my very first job in Los Angeles.
Wow, to work for him, but not many people can actually say that even knew the man. I mean, or in a broad population. I mean, he knew a lot of
Right.
people, but to be able to say that you actually knew the greatest, and then you seen him again years later, and he was like, I know,
Right. And then I ended up, a friend of mine about 4 years ago ended up sending me a picture that she found, because there's very few pictures out there with me in it
mm,
that people can see. And she said, I got to send you this picture. And the picture was me with all of them, but her husband was in the music business too. And all of them were at this event in Los Angeles, and right between, looking from between the guy's shoulders, you saw this little face peek through, and it was mine. And she was like, "I can't believe that you were hidden like that." I hate taking pictures. Just being honest, I hate taking pictures. So I'd rather be the one that's taking the pictures than being in the pictures.
I
But
don't
yes,
particularly, I don't particularly like taking pictures either myself. So you're not
but
allowed to.
my dad had a lot of daughters, and he was a photographer, and he practiced on us. So the older ones, the younger ones, the girlfriends, kids, everybody's kids, he took pictures of.
And you took up photography from your father.
Yes, I picked up the camera from him, but then after my dad passed away and I had all of this equipment, I decided to go on to school. So I ended up getting a bachelor's degree in photography and radio TV broadcasting. I took that in Los Angeles too.
Okay, so um, death row.
You jumping right in, huh?
Yeah, that's a there's a whole lot. I want you to um, take us into the journey to get the job, while at the job, and then leaving the job. Um, everything you know that you talk about, that you want everybody to know about the book, uh, the title of the book.
Okay. Um, okay, we're kind of gonna go backwards.
Okay.
Um, Once I left Death Row Records, I moved to Atlanta, Georgia, and is where I kind of got mixed in with some people that were writers, and they were very interested in my story. So they decided, okay, we're gonna tell this story, but we're gonna tell it from when you very first met with Suge in Atlanta. Cause see, once once I left Death Row Records, I hadn't seen Suge Knight and none of his entourage in 20 years. It had been 20 years when I walked out of the doors of Death Row Records that someone was interested in my story. Um, when I got to Death Row Records, my ex-husband was Tony Green, the bass player. He was the bass player for the Dramatics. He worked with George Clinton. He did his own songs, and he worked with David Ruffin Jr., who was David Ruffin from the Temptations, his son. And we lost my sister in 1991. So we moved back to Los Angeles, and Tony decided he wanted to bring a whole entourage from Detroit to LA. And I just wasn't having it. And they met a girl from Los Angeles, and I gotta say, I gotta give her credit, kinda, because none of it probably would have developed without her, because she loved David Ruffin Jr. Well, we thought, and anyway, she took them out on the town, and they ended up meeting Warren G and Snoop Dogg, and I think Nate Dogg was there. And they were so amazed that David Ruffin Jr. father was one of the Temptations. They were about to walk him in any office, record company, anywhere, and just because of that. And Tony playing bass opened the door for us all to end up working at Death Row Records. But we worked really just with Dre. And then Suge and Dre always was competing on some sort of level. So once Tony got in and the girl got with David and they had their little rendezvous, we all kind of got into death row offices, and Tony got in as the bass player, and David Ruffin got in as a background singer, ended up being a writer on, he wrote the hook on Gin and Juice. So a lot went on. My very first job with Suge was at a picnic that they had in Compton. I was scared to death. The police surrounded the park, and we were like, okay, what's really going on? I really wasn't quite ready for all the action. I kind of was a little bit older than all of them too, so more mature, and was about my business, and that was being a photographer. From there, as time as time went on, you start to see what goes on at death row, and I worked a lot with Dr. Dre from all night long on video shoots. Did a lot of photo shoots with him on his videos, and then we did our traveling. So our traveling days would take us to the Billboard Awards or whatever awards that we would go to. I would do the photography. And 9 times out of 10, it was always going to be some sort of drama, which I was a little bit too old for. But that's how we came up with the concept for the book. When I was at Death Row Records, I seen people get beat up. I seen people. I mean, one year Suge bought everybody a car. It might have not have been a new car, but it was a better car than what you were driving. But always keep in mind, Suge always owned the car. If it was raggedy and it rode on 3 wheels, he still owned that little raggedy car. So, but at some point, you have to appreciate the way his thinking process. He always was there to help somebody. At the same time, he was always there to hurt somebody.
Yeah, yeah, I got that. I got that from your book. He was a possessive individual.
Yes, he was very possessive of his employees, of he was possessive of his dogs, his cars, everything. Everything was his. He kind of remind you of your of a child that it's mine. This is mine. So that's kind of how he rode. Um, Not to give all the stories away in the book.
Mhm.
It was like You were his friend as long as you did what he wanted. I guess that's the way, a good way to put it.
Yeah, that sounds about right. Um, when you left Death Row Records, and you were in Atlanta, uh, how did I mean? Did it feel like a weight was lifted off of you?
Um, well, first, the way when I left Los Angeles, I had an artist, um, and I don't know, a lot of people don't realize artists can be very difficult sometimes. So I kind of passed him on to my ex, and my cousin was Melvin Franklin from the Temps. So when Melvin died, I was like, oh, I have to go because then I didn't have any family out there.
Mm.
And I had been there a long time. But when I left and went to Atlanta, I had came through Detroit. So first I left LA and went to Detroit. From Detroit, I went to Atlanta. Once in Atlanta, weird things started happening. Um, I would see these beautiful limousines pass my house. And I had another artist there that kind of he looked just like Tupac. His lyrics was deep like pop, and but he was deadly scared of Suge Knight. So we'd be sitting out on the front of the house, and he'd be like, "Why that car keep going by?" So I kind of got a little paranoid on what's going on. But then I realized the internet had just really came in. It was really coming in, and because it's been 26 years since our death row days. That's a long time when you really think about it. Snoop's oldest baby was a baby. The oldest kid was a baby, and none of the other ones were there. So when you start seeing, you live on a nice little quiet street in Atlanta, and all of a sudden you see limos going by, yeah, you're gonna start thinking, oh, are they looking for me for some odd reason? So now here I am. I've bought 4 rock wallets, 2 from Detroit and 2 in Atlanta. I raised them from puppies, so they were very protective, very protective. I call myself, this was my bodyguards. Atlanta just didn't suit me. It's certain. Atlanta just didn't have that I was looking for. Um, but I did do a lot of things in Atlanta. But yes, Suge was making his trips regularly to Atlanta. But when Lisa Left Eye died, I knew that I went to the same church that Lisa went to. So when I went to her services, Corrupt was there. And I really, really dropped the ball because I walked right in and saw Corrupt, and he was excited to see me. We exchanged phone numbers. And the next thing I knew, I had forgot and I had let my guard down. And Suge calls at my job. And I'm like, I'm sitting there, I'm scared to death. And he's like, well, come and see me. And see, we called him Simon. Like Simon says, Simon, you do what Simon says. And I'm like, I'm not coming to see you. And Corrupt was like, oh, it's cool, Simone. Don't worry about it. Everything is fine. It was 11:30 at night, and I left my job and I drove to that hotel in Atlanta. I think I had lost my mind for a minute because I had no idea what he was going to say. But I knew people had got the word out that she's working on a book and she's going to tell it all. Well, I am going to tell it all, but I'm going to tell on all of them, from the ex-husband to the whatever. And that's what I did. But he gave me his blessings on the book. And then he wanted that cat though. The guy that I had in Atlanta, he wanted him. Really, all the niceness he was laying the groundwork for was that he wanted Spirit in that camp. Because Spirit's look was Tupac all over again. and somebody had seen Spirit in action at the underground. Um, and it was like he gave the person my card, and the person gave the card to Suge, and Suge is like, "Oh, I know her." And that's when I was like, "Okay, I don't know about this." And he called one morning I was at the studio, and he called me first thing in the morning, and I'm like, "Okay, what? Who is this again?" And he said his name. I was like, "Okay, here we go again." But yes, the guy ended up the artist ended up dying in a car accident because he was so scared of Suge that he got on the road and he just went home back to Alabama. He left me and anything he had done. We were working with one of the Tims. He left everything and went back to Alabama. That's how scared he was of Suge, because he felt like any dependency he might have, Suge would have exploited that and made it a weakness for him. So he wasn't too happy about it. But Atlanta kind of was a little different.
Yeah, you also spoke of a female group whose parents refused to uh, do anything because
Yeah, that's
they
that's
were not gonna.
yeah, that's Fire and Ice. They out of Buffalo. Well, their father is the one that was my artist in Los Angeles. But he was just as ruthless as Suge. And when I
Mm.
brought him to Los Angeles, Suge was a little intimidated. And I ended up, so they ended up developing the girls. The girls are now they're in college. But and I tell young people all the time, don't get into the music business if you're not ready, because you gotta do your homework. It's a must. And reading gets you rich. And if you don't know how to read, then because that's all Tupac used to do. His thing was read and read and read. And every time you saw him, he had a book in his back pocket or something that had to do with learning lyrics or how he put his lyrics together or the knowledge that he absorbed from his books. So, but I liked hanging around him. I learned a lot of stuff from him about the way guys think in the rap industry.
And that's another question. Since you brought up Pac, what was it like to actually sit down and converse with Pac? You know, in a casual setting and just sit back and just chop it up with Pac.
Um, it was an eye opener because he was nothing like everyone tried to portray him. And he was kind of crazy about me. I'm telling you, I went over his house one day. He wanted some wings. He moved on my block in Los Angeles. And so I said, he called my cousin. My cousin, I have a couple of cousins that's in the industry. And she was like, I'll call her and we'll see if we'll go over there. We'll come over there. When we got over there, he had 5 bags of chicken wings. Do you know how long it's gonna take to cook 5 bags of chicken wings? And I'm like, "Ugh." But he was happy, and it was like sitting down. He was very respectful. He was way we got really close over time. As time went on, we got really close, and certain things that went down with me that he didn't realize that had went down, and afterwards when he found out, he was not a happy camper. And he made sure that some kind of way I would get a message about how and why things went the way they went. So left.
And what when he passed and the way he passed, what were your thoughts on that?
Um,
And Suge being present at the time.
right. Um, First of all, Tupac and my sister died on the same day. And
Oh
my
wow.
sister was born on the same day that they died. So Pac he was very aware of what was going on, very aware of the limitations and what he was going to have to do. He was aware of that. And I believe that because of the fact that my light just went out. The fact that he had already been talking about he was leaving Death Row Records. So with that being said, I just felt like it was a setup moment. Because, see, a lot of things went on at Death Row that was set up. They knew it was coming, and whatever it was, whatever the situation was, it was pre-planned. It never was nothing that was uh, just, oh, it just happened. Oh, that just happened. I don't see that, no.
Yeah, in the offices of Death Row, they even had a, I guess for lack of a better term, a beatdown room.
Yes,
Can you explain? Can you explain to everybody what that is?
that's a room that has two doors, and if you're not familiar with the layout of Death Row Records, if you got slipped up into that room, you got the shit beat out of you until you figured out how to get out of the room.
And everything was painted red. The carpet was red, and
The carpet was red with the Death Row logo on it. Um, everything, little, but it didn't have no furniture. No furniture was in it, just the logo and the red carpet. Because you know, if you bleed on red, you won't see it.
right,
So that's what I always thought. It was like, okay, well maybe that's why they got it red. But then when you go to went to his recording studio, the carpet in there was red too. See, I don't know if you're familiar with Nancy Fletcher, but Nancy Fletcher, we bought to Death Row Records too. She's the one that sings a lot of the hooks. So she did a lot of time in the studio. Where I did all my time with Dre doing videos, she did all her time in the studio. Um, and none of us felt like that it was going to come to an end. You know what I'm saying? It was like you never. He took good care of us. Don't get it wrong. He took good care of us. He made sure that we made plenty of money. That was what Suge did. But when it was over.
right. And I think in your book you said you made like $700 a day.
Hmm.
Was that $700
That
a
was
day?
for that was just for a couple hours worth of work.
And that was back in the
That was
early to
back in 1990, 91. Let's see, Death Row started. Let's see, I got there in 91. Death Row had started in 90. And the first job I did was at the park. And he had the girl bring the money over. Like if you told Suge you had a problem with a bill, boom, he didn't have a problem. Here's the money, go pay it. Me and Rage had got real close because Rage liked to gamble, and we come to Las Vegas and me and Rage hook up and go hit the crab tables. Um, but Death Row was definitely a learning experience. It was a platform that wasn't on a platform. You know what I'm saying?
Mhm.
Death Row was the number one record company independent that made more money than any record company. But I'm gonna tell you, that Michael Harris that recently got out of jail,
Yeah,
that's the one that put me on the map. He's the one that really put me on the map because from jail he was doing business. And when it came down to the Welcome to Death Row movie, his wife and him called me and they were like, look, we got a deal for you. I've never seen him or her at that point. I've never had met neither one of them. Since then, I've met his wife. I've never met him in person. But he made sure that the people that I was dealing with was going to pay for whatever I had for them. Even though when it boiled down to it, they had to pay more because they kind of stole a couple of pictures that they shouldn't have.
yeah, and those pictures were very important pictures that they
And
stole,
they
as
were
well as
very important pictures, right?
Did you want to touch on that, or you want to leave that for the book?
I'm gonna leave that for the book because
Okay,
if I tell them what they gonna why they gonna go by the book,
exactly. And so I leave that one up to you. um,
right?
that gentleman that you just spoke of, you want to tell people who he is, because he's like the foundation for death row, if I'm not mistaken.
Yes, Michael Harris. Michael Harris is was the co-founder of Death Row Records with David Kenner. It was David Kenner that kind of got Michael Harris to sign over stuff to Suge, but he was playing both ends against the middle.
Right. And well, he was one of the biggest. He was a kingpin.
He was the kingpin. He was the pen king. He was the king of all of it. Yeah, I'm curious. I haven't seen him, but I'm sure he's someplace close. But he's out there. He's out. Donald Trump and Snoop got him out. I must
Oh
say,
wow.
Snoop Dogg showed up for the party and showed out. I give Snoop plenty of props because I remember when he was young and he was coming up and when I was married to Tony, Snoop's father was my mailman in Detroit.
Mm,
He was my mailman in Detroit in two places, and he always pushed himself. He never pushed Snoop because Snoop was just Snoop. Snoop was Calvin at that time. He wasn't
right.
Snoop.
Right.
Um, but his father was played tambourine in a band. And we always laugh about it because Snoop said he just played the tambourine. He wasn't a real band member, right? But he was a
Right.
real nice mailman. So he was our friend, and that's how we kind of got to death row. Because when Snoop wanted to do something with the dramatics, his father was like, "Oh, well, I know Tony Green. He's on my route." And they went from one thing to another. The next thing we knew, we had the dramatics, and everybody was in California with Snoop Dogg. And that is how the dramatics did their very first video, and that was because Snoop's father was the mailman.
Oh wow.
So it kind of had it did a like a 180 degree turn
Hmm.
here on everything that was going on. But what we didn't know, what we were walking into, we didn't know. We didn't know when I said, "Oh, I'm gonna go work for Suge" to Tony. He was like, "Have you lost your mind?" Because he works for Dre. I worked for Dre too, but at the
Mm,
same time, Suge was like, I want a photographer too. I want her as my photographer." So when I went to the offices on the day that he told me to come to the office, I had no idea that he was about to tell his whole staff, "Oh, this is our new photographer." She's the matter of fact, she's the director of photography. So I'm like, oh, okay, that was a new title for me, and I took it and ran with it. At that point, I had worked at Soul Train and Capitol Records as a photographer and Motown Records, so I had kind of made the rounds. Um, so that was a big one. I had even worked at Solar, and you probably don't. Do you know what Solar Records is?
at Solar, they had Shalimar and all of them.
They had Shalimar, they had the Whispers, um, and Suge was a kid over there at that time. He was like a gopher kind of guy over there. But he learned all the tricks from right over there. He learned everything he learned was right there at Solar Records.
And so I know about Solar because, for one, I was a big Howard Hewitt and Jody Watley fan as a kid, and my cousin used to sing backup for Howard Hewitt after he went solo.
Oh, okay,
So,
okay, yeah.
so
Yeah, I used to work at Soul Train, but I used to do stuff with um, the girl from Shalimar,
Jody,
Jody Watley.
yep,
She had a little baby. The baby was the prettiest baby you ever seen, and I would photograph them on and off, when they, just going over there. I think I did her first or second birthday, and then and now she's about 30 something years old. The baby is about 30 years old. I haven't seen her. I mean, really, I'm making my comeback out on the West Coast, and you're the first one I'm telling it to. I'm back on the West Coast.
Wow. Time flies, doesn't it? Because I remember playing that. I think it was Howard Hewitt's first solo album, and my dad walks past my bedroom. He goes, "Boy, what you know about that? You don't know nothing about that."
Right.
Matter of fact, let me
Yeah.
go. He looked at me like in the it was another song I was playing. It was a rap song, but it was off of it was sampling that float on.
Oh, you talking about the enchantment? Not
Yeah,
enchantment, the not enchantment, but float on. That was the floaters.
yeah, I think so. And my
Yeah,
father was
that's the
like,
floaters from Detroit.
yeah, I think my father said something like, "Oh, I was listening to that in high school," but it was a remake of into a rap song. So I listened to all that.
But
I mean, go ahead.
a lot of songs are rap songs. A lot of songs that rappers use are songs that were hits back in my day.
Yeah.
And people really don't know that. They really don't know that Dre sampled so many songs. That was one of the things that they all were good at. They know how to sample a song. Well, see, they just didn't know how to play a song. And that's where Tony Green came into play because he could take a song and play the song the way you want him to play the song, but you still got to feel that it was the other song. Because really, when you write a song, if you change a few of the lyrics, the bars on the song, it can be a whole different song, but it's
Mm-hmm.
still the same song. Well, Tony brought that extra funk to Death Row Records with Ricky Rouse on guitar and Barney on drums and Nancy singing background. He brought a real nice blend of people together to make Death Row hot, and I gotta admit that. Even though he's an ex, I gotta give it credit where credit is due. He really did well with the music at Death Row Records.
Speaking of the music and Dre, you want to talk about the riff between D. Ruff and Dre and the music?
I don't have a problem with that. The thing is that they and I to this day I think David Ruffin Jr. is just now starting to get. David wrote Gin and Juice Hook,
Mm-hmm.
and Dre being who he is, he'll give you your rights. He'll give you your credit. I tell people all the time I never had a problem with Dre, but see sometimes when the other guys get influenced, they want all the credit. Everybody wants all the credit. You gotta give credit where credit is due. And they ended up jumping on David Ruffin Jr. at Dre House, out in Calabasas. It was like, really? Come on now. But that was the dog pound. And I think that's kind of why it has opened the door for Snoop to do his reinvent himself on a different level because he kind of cut out a lot of bull crap that was around him that could have got him in more trouble. But he was able to back away and do his thing because at this point he got a real family that he has to feed. And I get it, but they still never ever looked out for the ladies. Jewel, the Lady of Rage, myself. Nancy Fletcher is always pulling needles and nails trying to get her writers on music to this day, or featured on whatever project. They don't give the ladies the credit. They really don't want us to do what we have to do. I was working on a book deal and they didn't want to give me the book deal because of Suge. Fine. I'm gonna put a book out. Now you might not like it, but it's coming out by whatever means necessary.
And that's another thing I wanted to touch on. I wanted you to go in on women in the industry. Rage. There was a
The
few other
baddest
female.
female rapper to ever live to me. Rage was the baddest female rapper. Okay, yeah. There's a couple of other ones out there. I love Queen Latifah. I love MC Light, but Rage was the one, and they did not want to give her a chance.
I didn't know she was from New York. I thought she was strictly West Coast.
No, she's from Farmville, Virginia, VA, but she
Oh, I thought.
came through New York with the LA Posse. Remember the LA Posse?
I remember the name.
Yeah, they used to be managed by Norm Nixon, and they were out of New York. They worked with LL Cool J. They
Oh,
were on
okay.
Def Jam Records, and they are the ones that had Rage in the beginning. They signed Rage to Dre, and then she was in New York at that point, and she came to Cali, and Nikki D was from Cali, and she went to New York. So it's almost like they switched sides. But Nikki was at Def Jam, and the Lady of Rage was with Dr. Dre.
Right. So there was her, and then there was a few other ones that you mentioned, and then and you spoke on Yo Yo, and you were her road manager.
I was
And,
Yo-Yo's road manager.
right.
Um, Yo is totally different than all the other female rappers. To me, Yo never really cussed. She didn't act crazy, talk she didn't talk nasty, really disrespectful in her raps. And a lot of times when you really look at the music industry and the rapping, if you look back to Houdini didn't rap, they didn't cuss and hoes and bitches and all that stuff in their songs. But the Lady of Rage, boy, when she got done with a black man and what they couldn't do and do, it was like unbelievable. Rage could put some lyrics together, and she still is good. That's my girl there.
Yeah, I remember reading about y'all's night at the blackjack table.
Oh my goodness, yes. We made a lot of money, but we spent it and then we got left. They left us. They left us and went on back to Los Angeles. Me and Rage was looking stupid, but we did make a little money that night. And she tell people all the time, me and Simone, that's how I learned to gamble. I still gamble. It might not be a good thing, but I still gamble.
Yeah, that's what I feel. I feel hurt if I spend $1 on a lottery ticket, don't win nothing.
Oh, well,
So
you know what? Don't you uh oh, I know where you at. I remember. I know where you at now. So, but yes, I've had fun in your city with the lottery.
yeah, I wish I had some fun. But why do you think the women at that time wasn't getting no shine? I read that the female artists at Death Row always got pushed back, and the male artists got pushed to the front.
Yes, and that's true. I don't think it's changed today at all. I think it's the same way. I think that women are still being pushed to the back, and the guys are pushed to the front, and they want it their way and no other way. And that's not right. But it was like they saw more money with the guys. They, I, I mean, because I'm telling you, when Rage went out, she demanded your undivided attention as a rapper, and they just really they put her on the shelf so high that she would probably have to lose it to just get off that shelf. And see, I don't think that they were prepared to see how fast time flies. And a lot of people be thinking, oh, I'll come back to that. And then the next thing you know, 5, 6, 7 years done went past when you was gonna come back to it. So now it's played out because they're onto something that we don't even understand now. Half the rapping we don't understand. Um, but yes, they did that. They did it all the time. There was another girl that's big time. She's on her way. Her name was Gina.
Mm.
Gina was a Gina was Suge's worst nightmare. Because not only was she pretty, but she could kick some ass. Okay? So she would whoop a bitch ass at the drop of a dime if you disrespected her. But she was really a publicist, a writer. But you was not gonna hurt her. You wasn't. I think she must have been raised in Boston or something, and she had this flair about her that, oh, ain't nobody pushing me around. And to this day, you don't push Gina around. And Suge knew that. And Gina would go places with us, and it was just like Gina was running things. I was like, Grandma, hey, look, my nephew was with me, and he was like, Auntie, they're off the chain down in the hotel lobby. And I'm like, okay, well, just be safe. You know, we went through some serious different situations with Death Row Records, from Jack the Rapper. Had you ever been to Jack the Rapper?
No.
You never heard of Jack the Rapper, have you?
No, I don't think so. It doesn't sound familiar.
Jack the Rapper was an organization that was like, it was like a hip hop festival that would go down every year in a different part of the country. And BET and MTV and all of these companies would buy advertising for Jack the Rapper. This particular year was in it was in Orlando, and all of a sudden there were people throwing TVs out the window of the hotel. And we're standing downstairs watching. Well, you know, Death Row Records got blamed, and we weren't even there. We were outside watching the TVs coming out the window. But Death Row Records is in the building, and they did all that. So if Death Row didn't do anything, they got blamed. And when they did do something, you know, they had to take responsibility of that too. I mean,
Uh,
somebody smoked weed on the plane that we was on.
I was
The
about to get into that
whole
one.
damn airplane smelled like weed. The people are not dumb. The airlines is like the airline stewardess is like, when we arrive in the Miami airport, we will be having the police meet us at the gate. And it's like, I told my nephew, look, Alonzo Mourning was sitting next to me on the plane. I was like, look, we rolling with you, because I ain't with them. I'm not going to jail with them right now, getting off this plane. But yes, that was one. Suge flipped out about that because he wasn't on the plane with us, so he didn't know. He didn't know what was going on. But yeah, it was
I could
interesting.
I could not imagine being on a plane with Death
They
Row.
went in the bathroom and smoked the weed. And I'm gonna tell you, I ain't gonna tell you who did it, but I sure know who did it. And it was a little girl. She was like, she said to her, she said, "You were smoking marijuana?" And she was like, she told that little girl, "You better mind your own damn business." And a few little other bad words. I was like, okay, y'all need to quit. Y'all need to quit.
Wow.
But
Wow.
yeah, they were a little bit when you got a lot of money like that and you think you can do whatever you want to do,
Mm.
that's one of the things that I didn't like. That's the part of Death Row I didn't like. I liked that my creativity, I was allowed to do my creativity. I didn't like the fact that I had to get cameras so people could have cameras so they can catch other people getting beat down. I didn't like that part of it. You
Yeah,
know,
yeah,
like,
yeah. He told you, he gave you money, and told you to buy a bunch of cameras so everybody could have a camera to catch a beat down or catch this or catch
yeah,
that.
whatever something happened, anytime
Wow.
something happened, and then they turn the camera in to me, and and then after I get all these cameras and these pictures printed up, then he'll send them to his boys at the prison. Okay, did that make any sense? So I would be up night at books of pictures for him to put in the care package with the canned meat and the candy and all that stuff. There's a big photo album that would go to the prison for the prisoner, for his friend.
Wait a minute. Doesn't that stuff get inspected before it gets to the inmate?
Say that again.
Doesn't that stuff get inspected before it gets to the inmate? So wouldn't like some form of law enforcement look at these photos of people getting beat up before it actually
Oh
gets to
no,
the
it was
inmate?
no, no, no. In those photographs, they would just drop a little bit of that in there. Really, what he was showing them is that death row was moving on. So if we did a video, all the pictures from the video would be in there. If we did
Okay.
Jewel, all the pictures of all the girls would be in there. But then he'd drop a little bit of this, and a little bit of that. Not really, people don't. When you got money, you can get anything done that you want. Anything. And that is where I think Suge made a lot of mistakes.
Wow. So you believe the well outside of his possessive mentality, the money made it worse because he felt like he could get away with anything. So like the like
Right.
the
But
like the time where he blew up his kid's mother's car in the garage or something.
in the garage, right. I mean, come on now. And that is just one episode of him. He done that was her story that you read. That was
Mm-hmm.
her interview, not mine.
Mm-hmm.
That's her telling her part of the story. She was nice. I've been knowing her ever since I was back in my beginning days up at Motown. So she been around a long time. She used to be uh, with BET, not BET. Yeah, it was the Black Radio exclusive. She used to handle a lot of stuff over there. But she's been around a long time and she's still surviving. The kids are grown. But yes, Suge gets very possessive, but all of them had that possessive way. If you really sit back and think about it, Dre had his possessive way. When it comes to the guys, to me in the music business, it's almost like they drink too much. They do too much of everything. You cannot drink and be happy. That's not gonna make you happy. Uh, I never knew that Dre, never knew one time that Dre was doing what he was doing to Miss Chalet because he treated me with the utmost respect. But that was because I wasn't his girlfriend. I wasn't his mistress on the side. So I wouldn't have saw that side. Always saw the professional nice side. And it goes for Snoop, the same thing. Snoop has always been real nice to me. I never had a problem with him, Nate Dogg, Warren G, none of them. Suge was the problem. Suge was always the problem. But then at some point you have to forgive him. And that's what I did. I forgave him for a lot of things that he done.
Right. Um, I want to touch on this real quick. Tell us about how the relationship between you and Yo-Yo cultivated. The dramatic thing that happened to you, and then she drove 20 minutes to you.
Okay, so the night before all of this went down, Tupac was busted licking the bowl. Well, Yo-Yo came to this party too. Daryl Strawberry was at this party, and New Edition was at this party. So this was the night before. So in the middle of the night, so after the party, I went to a friend of mine's office. They had an earthquake in Cali. I come back, and about 3 in the morning, I got a telephone call that my sisters had died in a car accident. And my girlfriend upstairs over me decided, oh my God, I'm not going down there because I don't know what's wrong with her. There's something wrong with her because I can hear her. So she called Yo-Yo, and Yo-Yo being who she is, I really didn't know her. She was like, all I know is that somebody was at my door knocking. I don't even know how she got in the building. And it's probably my friend upstairs probably let her in, and she came right to the apartment, and she was like, oh my God, Simone, really? And she came in, and I had just got to Los Angeles. Just got there. I hadn't been there 3 weeks. And I was like, how am I gonna go to Buffalo? You know, I have an empty apartment, me and her sitting on the floor drinking coffee, and she had a purse full of money. She must have had just really just been Yolanda has a thing about always being prepared. So I guess she had did her thing because when she arrived at my house, there was no open banks. It was like 7:30 in the morning. And she came on in and we sat down and I told her what was going on. She hugged me. She reached in her purse and gave me five $100 bills and said, I didn't know her. She said, go home and when you come back, I got something for you. And when I came back, she had hired me to be her road manager.
And that's real solid. See, people. I mean, and like you said, you just met her what the night before. You didn't really know her.
The night before, I didn't know her. I had just met her.
And then you come back and she gave you a job.
And she gave me a job. And I'm telling you, I had moved back and forth to Los Angeles 3 times before that time. I had moved there 3 different times.
And I think one time you went back to LA and tried to find work, and you went to Stevie Wonder's studio, and
Got hit by a car.
Wow.
That was really a photography store. That was a photography store, and I worked next door. And when I went into, I had a habit of, I have every kind of photography equipment you can imagine. So I wanted to print my own pictures. So I go in the photography store next door to the job. And as I'm walking out the store, a car backs up and knocks me into next week. There goes the job. I ended up getting the money, whatever they gave me, and went back to Detroit and I got married. So I sat it down again. I sat down for 5 years that time. And then I couldn't take it, but I went back to school and got my bachelor's degree. And after that, I said, oh, I got to go back to California. I got to give it one more try. And that one more try was with Death Row Records. That's the next thing that happened after Tony got there.
So, how would you say that this all of this has changed you, strengthened you? I mean, what would you say it's done for you?
What it has done to me is I
Your sound stopped.
are you there?
Yeah, I
Can
hear
you
you
hear
now.
me?
Yep.
Oh yeah, I have another meeting at 5:30. I don't trust people the way I used to back then. You know, now I kind of look at you side eye.
Right.
Um, but you know, they say that old saying, "What goes around comes around," and all you gotta do is wait, and you'll see it.
Hmm.
That's what's been going on. I've been given the honor and the pleasure to be able to see people that have done me wrong, to see what happens to them, even if I didn't pursue it.
Right.
And I'm gonna leave it on that. I'm gonna
It's
leave it
called
on that.
karma. It's called karma. Can you
Right.
pick?
Karma.
She's a dirty broad. Uh, can you pick up one of your books and show it to the camera so everybody can see the cover, so when they go to order the book, they know exactly that they know they're
Okay,
getting the
here's
right
the
book.
cover. Right. The book is called Time Served, My Days and Nights on Death Row Records. And you can get the book at Amazon. You can pull it up on Amazon under Simone Green or Time Served, My Days and Nights on Death Row Records.
Everybody go and get that book. Anywhere you see Simone's name pop up for an interview or anything, make sure you go over there and uh, show your love. She's going to be on Barbershop Conversations with Fred as soon as they get that scheduled. So go over there and show love
That's
on Fred.
April the 7th.
Oh, it's
April
scheduled
the 7th.
April the 7th.
Yes.
Barbershop
Right.
Conversations. And
Yes. Barbershop conversation. I'm gonna have to wear my Dr. Dre stuff that day. I had to look cute for you today.
okay. So and this will re-air on a TuneIn app, Issuers Radio. Shout out to Donnie Phoenix and the brother Jonathan Moloch for hooking this interview up and also rebroadcasting it to their nearly 50 million subscribers. And Ms.
Thanks for
Simone,
having me.
I thank you for coming, and I love that book. I'm probably have to read that again because
All
I got it
right.
down.
Well, there's some
I,
pictures on in there that you probably haven't seen. So, but I really appreciate you having me on your show today.
I appreciate it. I appreciate you coming. If you ever want to come back to give an update or anything, or if you get that movie deal and you want to come back and make that announcement,
Yes.
because that's the goal. Make
Well,
this
I
into a
will
movie.
make one announcement. Me and Snoop and Dr. Dre are going to the African American Museum with my work. So my work, when the museum opens up, it will have Dr. Dre, Tina Marie, and Snoop Dogg from my collection.
There we go.
So
So
thank you so much.
I
All
need to
right.
get up there. I need to get there. My wife kept getting tickets, and there was something pops up. Now we never made it, and we only live like an hour away from it. So need to
Right.
get
Well,
up
you
there.
know that they're not open yet, so you still have time.
Yeah,
I'll keep you posted.
I appreciate it, and thank you for coming. We'll
Thank
stay
you
in.
so much for having me.
Yeah, we'll definitely stay in touch.
All right. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right, everybody. It was a nice show. I appreciate everybody for coming through, and I will see you next time. Peace.